like I said earlier in your bio, you have such a wonderful library of books, over 70
Hmm.
books that you've written on some of the most
Hmm.
fascinating topics. Tonight, we're
Hmm.
going to delve into a very interesting one, The King in Orange. For the audience, could you give like a brief synopsis of what the book is about?
Okay, basically, um, we all got the media's official story on what was behind the Donald Trump phenomenon, why he became president, why he won, why he lost, all this kind of stuff. It was all a very specific canned media pressure, not unlike the kind of thing that we all heard back when George W. Bush was invading Iraq, and about as honest, which is to say, not much. I was
Right.
very interested in what was going on there, partly during the election campaign. I was doing a series of posts. I predicted his election in January of 2016 in a blog post, and of course that got me some strange responses. And but I got to hear from a lot of the people who were involved, kind of peripherally in his campaign, in the movement that coalesced around him. I got to know people who were involved in the various strange corners of the internet, such as the Chans, 4chan, 8chan, and so on. Um, and I realized in the course of this that a much stranger story was being shoved under the rug by the corporate media. And second, that talking about what was actually going on in America, what drove the improbable rise of this reality TV star wrestling promoter to the President of the United States. Um, that story was worth telling, and that story was worth telling partly because of the lessons it had to say about our politics and our society, and partly because of what it had to say about magic, about the realm of the unknown, the realm of the various hidden forces that drive human affairs. So all of that went into The King in Orange. Those are listeners who know their way around weird fiction will recall Robert W. Chambers' famous stories about the King in Yellow, and that kind of inspired the thing in some ways because that same sort of Lovecraftian sense of presences and powers that nobody will talk about right outside the edge of your vision pervades American society these days. There's an enormous amount that nobody will talk about, an enormous amount of things that respectable people absolutely deny, even though everyone knows it's going on. And that fed very much into this book. One of the basic things to keep in mind, and I encourage our listeners to keep this in mind if they're run by the book, you will want to throw this book against the wall at least once during the time you read it. That's deliberate. It's not there to pat you on the head and agree with everything you think.
Right. Yeah, man, I think a good place to start with this whole thing would be how large of a role does magic play when it comes to, politics and culture creation and all of these things that kind
Hmm.
of shape our reality? How
Oh,
how
yeah,
much
yeah,
does
yeah.
that play into it?
Oh, it's all about magic. Now, let's start with a definition, though. Dion Fortune, who was one of probably the 20th century's top theoreticians of magic, and also a crackerjack practitioner, by the way, defined magic as the art and science of causing change in consciousness in accordance with will. Now, if that does not sound like Harry Potter, you're getting the idea. I
Right.
mean, come on, the Harry Potter movies and books have as much to do with real magic as, young Frankenstein has to do with real science. So we can set all that stuff apart or over to one side. Um, some of magic works through very straightforward, ordinary means. Some of it works through connections that are a little subtler, a little more secret, a little more heavily denied by modern materialist science. But there's a lot of it that works in very straightforward fashion. One of the examples that I love to use about this is advertising. Advertising is actually a form of cheap, debased magic. When you look at let's say, an ad for fizzy brown sugar water, I'm sure you can come up with other names for it, but that's what
Right.
it is. Okay, here you have this ad for fizzy brown sugar water. Does it tell you here are the marvelous things that fizzy brown sugar water will do for you? Of course not. Does it actually give you any concrete reason to buy fizzy brown sugar water? No. What it does, it shows you this picture. Here's an example. You've got, half a dozen people. They're young. They're smiling. They're attractive. They're dressed in the kind of upper middle class look that shows that they have plenty of money. They're having a great time, and they're all clutching these cans of fizzy brown sugar water. This is a magical talisman. It is designed to affect your consciousness and make you think, not at a conscious level, but down below the surface. Ooh, if I buy fizzy brown sugar water, then I'll be like these wealthy, attractive, happy people. Now, of course, we all know that's a lie. We all know the only thing you're getting from fizzy brown sugar water is rotted teeth. Okay, but it doesn't matter. Because unless you know what's being done, unless you realize that that thing, that talisman is being used to manipulate your subconscious, you can fall for it and end up, without ever intending to, throwing a 6-pack of fizzy brown sugar water into your shopping cart when you're next picking up groceries. And that's what it's all about. That's what the whole advertising industry is about. Warping your mind, manipulating your feelings, and watch the advertisements. Watch what do they stress, what do they use, and you can see what's actually going on. You can see that a lot of people are lonely and unhappy. Thus, we have the bunch of people hanging together, laughing and having a great time, or what have you. Look at the ads and look at them as instruments of control. Look at them as instruments of manipulation, and you can actually learn an enormous amount about certain kinds of magic.
Now, were these tactics going on since, I guess, the dawn of advertising and television?
Oh, yeah, before the dawn of advertising and television, these things were going on in print advertising in the 19th century. Basically, as soon as people started making use of advertising, obviously, if you find something that works, you're going to use it, right? And you know whether something works because it affects your sales. So you've got this advertising industry unknowingly stumbling along in the track of magic, or in some cases, I think there was some direct knowledge going on. But yeah, it goes all the way back to the 19th century.
You said you had predicted Trump's election. Could you tell us a little bit about how that came about?
Oh, sure. What now? I'm going to have to talk about some of those unspeakable realities of American public life because they had to do with my prediction. One of the things that I've been tracking for a long time is the great unmentionable fact about American public life, which is that the working classes in America over the last 40 years have been destroyed. When I was a kid, back in the 60s and 70s, a family of 4 with one working class income could afford a house, they could afford a car, they could afford 3 square meals a day, they could afford health care, all the basic requirements of life, plus a little left over to buy, presents for the kids come Christmas. Nowadays, a family of 4 with a single working class income is living on the street. That's an immense change, and nobody wants to talk about it. Literally, we've watched the destruction of the working class. Deliberate policies have plunged working class Americans into poverty and misery, supported by both parties until 2016. So that was the thing that I was watching. You see, I was aware of that because I've run with quite a wide range of people, and not all of them belonging to the comfortable classes. And so I noticed that as soon as Donald Trump got out there in the, declared his election campaign and so on, he started speaking toward the working classes. He started offering them some of the things that they needed in order to better themselves. And I immediately knew that 2 things were going to happen. First, he actually had a chance of winning. And second of all, the entire managerial professional classes would unite against him. The media would unite against him. Everybody who had benefited from the destruction of the working classes would be absolutely adamant against him. And of course, that's exactly what happened. And so that was why on January 20th, 2016, I posted a piece called Donald Trump and the Politics of Resentment on the blog I ran in the Arch Druid Report, and said, I think he's going to win. I think it's very clear at this point that Hillary Clinton has bought her way to the election, and the Democratic Party machine will see to it that she gets the nomination. But I don't think she can beat Trump, and I don't think any of the Republicans can beat Trump either, because he's speaking to the people who have been systematically ignored for all these years. And of course that's what turned out to be the case. That's why he was able to win over voters in the crucial swing states of the upper Midwest, states that have been economically devastated by the policies of offshoring jobs and the various other things that have destroyed the working classes. They decided these were states and electoral districts that voted for Barack Obama last time because Obama promised them a change. Of course, he didn't give them one. He was, he talked a great line, and then as soon as he got into office, it was business as usual all the way. But they were willing to gamble on Trump because they hoped that he would actually put in policies that would benefit them, and that's what happened. And so one of the things you can see there is the great unmentionable fissure in American life. It's not about gender. It's not about race. It's not about any of these other things the media loves to talk about. It's social class. It's how much income you make. It's not just the 1% versus the 99%, which is what a lot of people like to claim. No, it's the upper 20% versus the lower 80%. And the upper 20% are the ones who control the media. They're the ones who run the media. They're the staff. They're the people who work there. They're the ones who control the national dialogue. This is normal. But they have been supporting policies that have devastated the working classes and the poor. And now that's become a political liability for them. And that's a lot of why you have this amazingly shrill quality in American public life, because they don't want to admit that they have been pushing policies that have ruined tens of millions of people's lives.
Now, I've always agreed with the saying, two wings, same bird. But is that the case? At the very top, is there just one elite faction in control pulling the strings on both sides?
Oh, it's more complicated than that. What you have in our society, in any complex society, you have various elite factions. They will unite against people below them, no question, but they're constantly clawing at each other, trying to find an edge, trying to get more money, more power. And so at the upper end of the pyramid, you have this constant, endless fight for power and privilege and possessions. And so what happens is what happened in 2016. This is something that happens in the history of every society sooner or later. Somebody among the upper classes realizes that he can take power by calling in the strength of the people who have been neglected all these years. So what we had up until 2016, we had two wings, one bird. We had the Democrats and the Republicans both pushing identical policies. They dangled a little red meat for their followers here or there, insisted they were going to do something about this or that, never did anything, pursued those common policies. But at this point, that's actually coming unglued because a lot of politicians from the Republican Party and a handful from the Democratic Party, Bernie Sanders kind of showed the way here, have demonstrated that it's possible to win elections by appealing to the people who were excluded, by appealing to the working classes and the poor, not by doing the usual thing of tossing a few crumbs from the table for them, but actually speaking to their needs. And so the entire situation, the entire political context in America right now is in flux. It's in a state of confusion because the existing elite structures are trying to maintain their position and not doing a very good job of it. And you have various insurgents from the far left and the far right, both who are figured out how to appeal to ordinary people. And they're looking at basically replacing the current elite and its policies. And of course, this happens in intervals. Every society goes through this cycle of elite replacement. I forget who the historian was who said the history of China is all about armored boots marching upstairs and silk slippers coming back down them. And that's true of every elite, okay? Every elite, they come in, they're strong, they're capable, they're predatory, they're driven, they want power, they want wealth, they get it, and then they go soft. And then they become decadent. They become weak. And then they lose their grip on power. And a new wave of elite replacement, a new wave of people who want to be elite, elbows them out of the way and takes the top slot. So we're in the middle of one of those cycles right now, and that's one of the things that makes American politics so shrill.